Social prescribing is a very full-on conversation at this point in history, which I think is not surprising given primary care under so much strain and our communities in so much need. And I think that more than ever we're realising as general practitioners that we need to deliver care in partnership with others, partly because we need to offload our surgeries from the people that are coming asking questions that we are barely equipped to answer, that 20-25% of social issues that would be better dealt with even initially by somebody else. And also I would suggest, because we're realising as general practitioners that the wider determinants of health, the non-medical bits, impact significantly on the bit that we would call medical and that we can help our patients with. It's also an incredible tool to build partnership, to have conversations, to start to blur boundaries in localities, to look at the opportunities of innovation through collaboration. Because we've got a lot of coalface organisations in our society that are very good at delivering particular kinds of wider care to particular members of our communities. And they've been doing it for years. And they know what they need to do it better. And they know what works. So as we start to listen to them and make connections with them, as we start to build a network between primary care and all the wider care, imagine it may be like a spider's web, gradually kind of connecting all those good things together, so we start really generating health in our communities. I'm going to introduce you to Jay. Those of you that work inside a general practice will recognise the kind of gentleman in his 40s who doesn't come very often, doesn't sit down, sort of stands and fidgets, nips out for a fag, comes back in and fidgets a bit more. Doesn't come very often. Single, mental health history, but very vague. Actually moved just outside of my practice boundary, but he will not go to any other GP. If I deregister him, he won't have another GP again. So we let him come. And over the years I've known him, I've not been able to get hold of anything that I can really progress for him. He's discharged the psychiatrists because he's actually disagreed with every diagnosis they've made in terms of antisocial personality disorders, etc., etc. Nothing actually really fits who he knows he is. He self-medicates his chaos with cannabis. And unbeknownst to me, he's a dad. He has a 10-year-old son. And he came to see me a few months ago, unusually downcast and embarrassed. And he said, "Here, Doc, my 10-year-old son is really embarrassed now coming to see me at the weekends. He's looking at the damp, he's looking at the dirt. He doesn't really want to sit down on the sofa. I don't know what to do, Doc. I know I'm not much, but I am a dad and he means the world to me and I want to be a good dad." And he's describing his housing situation. One of our community navigators works with the housing association that he's effectively under. Little light comes on. Here's my moment. I tell him about the community navigator scheme, introduce him to the community navigator. Community navigator comes round, sees the state of the housing, connects him in a way he's not been able to connect himself before with the housing association. In come the DIY men, various grants found to replace some of the furniture, etc. Jay comes back to me really excited. Not only is his son relaxed and happy now, but also he's been fascinated to help the DIY men, and he's been working with them around about the place. So I said to him, "Would you ever consider volunteering with the housing association building team and maybe get involved?" "Here, Doc," he said, I would. That would be great. I said, would you ever consider maybe a scheme whereby ultimately you could get some employment in that area? Oh, Doc, he said, that would be great. I didn't realise how good I am with my hands. Comes back to me again. Looking better. Here, Doc, I've just about finished with the cannabis now. Very occasionally if I have a really bad day. And Doc, well, we realised there was more work to do. The damp that came down, the damp that came up, but also the damp on the outside. So I went round the block and I talked to all the people in my block and I said, here, what should we do about this? Because we've got to move the earth away from the place and sort it out so that it's not damp anymore. And they let me take the lead on it and I talked to them all, which plants could be lifted, which plants had to stay there. So he's interested in horticulture now as well as building, and I've sorted it all out. He said, so now he said they all talk to me, and even this really weird geezer next to me, nobody ever talked to him, now he talks to me. So I have got this gentleman that is virtually cannabis free, certainly non-dependent, who is a fulfilled dad, who has a sense of what he can do and has connected with his community and has actually taken on a community leadership. Now, I could do none of that with a prescription pad, none of that in a GP consultation, but the community navigator could make all that happen by probably a few separate half hours of her time connecting him up and getting him to move beyond a very stuck place. Our Community Navigator scheme started in West Hertfordshire. It's now Hertfordshire wide. We invented it literally on a flip chart like you do with the Better Care Fund money, and we decided we wanted to mess up all the boundaries and just have useful people who weren't health, social care, local government, third sector. They were just useful people who could fix things. And we deliberately blurred the boundaries. So nobody had that sense of I'm working for, this is a boundary, this is my silo. And it's worked so well. So our community navigators are actually hosted by different third sector organisation, housing, caring, Age UK, etc. And it's made the third sectors all play nicely together, which is revolutionary. Before our social prescribing, they were all at war with one another, but it's connected them for collaboration and communication, and they facilitate and support one another. So already it's transformed the community. Now those guys are managed by a manager who is paid partly by health and partly by the county council. And that guy is has got a line manager within the CCG. But people don't look at those boundaries, but I'm just explaining to you the structure. We've now linked it with the hospital discharge team. We've now linked it into East and North Hertfordshire. They've got a particularly good hospital discharge thing going, and so we're taking the benefit of that, and we've bolted in Age UK and Red Cross as firm partners. We have this umbrella organisation called Hearts Help, which you can access on the phone or on the internet if you can do that, because let's face it, some of our patients don't need a significant other to actually help them find those solutions. If they're signposted to a network of resource, they can find their way through. So our navigator scheme is like Hearts Help on legs, if you like, and it really, really works. Everybody that I have referred has made substantial progress, and they come back and use my service as a GP far more intelligently, with far more self-esteem and dignity about them. It's why wouldn't you do it, to be frank? Why wouldn't you do it? But part of this is how do you do it? And what we've noticed in the network, because there's a national social prescribing network, details of which you will find in the documentation that you'll receive, and there are also now regional social prescribing networks springing up. So I'm the clinical lead for the East of England one. And what we are finding is lots of areas are doing it slightly differently. And sincerely, it doesn't matter how you do it, just get on board with the other champions that want to make it happen. There are some areas where the GPs were so disinterested that it has been entirely grown up from the community, a faith-based organisation, a bunch of charities, whoever, and they've got together and they've created a movement, and then they've invited the general practice to come on board, which is great. And it doesn't matter who leads and who lags, as long as ultimately we all get on board together with this incredible resource. Okay, now this lady, I didn't know what was wrong with her either. And I do appeal to you as GPs, all of you that have got patients, you see them on the list and you think, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Is it going to be another not really gone anywhere consultation? Social prescribing is probably your answer. So Tina, fidgety, awkward body language, but apparently the life and soul of Waitrose when she works there. And I'm like, what is it with you? She comes to me eventually admitting anxiety, which she denied before. So I thought, oh, we've got something to go on. And we kind of wiggled our way through to some SSRIs and thought, okay, perhaps pharmacologically I'll start trying to shift you so that I can work out what on earth is going on. She comes back to me eventually in a terrible state, admitting that for some years now, she's found it difficult to open her post. She goes home after being the life and soul of Waitrose. She shuts her curtains, she locks her door, and she just sits and feels incapable and tense. Doesn't open this pile. Well, it was really difficult to get her and the community navigator together, because every time she said she was going to pick up, every time she said she was going to open her door, every time she said she was going to meet, she didn't show. I was the only person in the world that knew about this post issue. So I had to arrange a consultation whereby I had Tina and the community navigator in the same room. They shook hands, we had a little conversation, and then I put them in the room next door to begin their relationship. Community navigator went through the post, realised this woman was about to be evicted because she hadn't been paying her rent. What, that she couldn't pay it, she hadn't paid it. Managed to sort it all out with the help of the CAB, community navigator, and the little note for me. It went to court, but she escaped eviction. All her court costs were paid by a grant accessed by the community navigator. I didn't know you could get these kind of things. She was given £500 as a grant to restart her life, which was in a shabby state, which she tried to give back to the CAB, but they gave it back to her. And suddenly this lady is not only opening her post, but she is resourced and resilient and really grateful. Now, had it not been for the community navigator scheme, I would have been at a loss to know what to do with a lady that doesn't open her post. And that was a disaster waiting to happen. I've got thousands of stories. Every story, every referral I've made from the bottom of my heart, I am glad I made that referral. And I'm starting to understand what makes humans okay. And it's far more than I learned at medical school. We've over-medicalised, we've defined people by their diagnoses. They come to us thinking that those diagnoses and the drugs associated with them will solve something. And in many ways, we've been complicit in them losing a sense of self, of accountability for themselves, and the ability to address those wider determinants that make them who they are and that enable them to fulfill their potential. Somehow, as the great big general practice, we've inadvertently robbed our communities of really being the resources that they are. We know they all respect us and they're grateful for us, and that's great. But now is the time to turn round for us as GPs and say, do you know what? You are great too. Let us work in partnership and wrap our communities around the residents and patients that we commonly share, and let us start building this resource. Let's start getting it really robust, evaluated, and let us move past this over-medicalisation to empowerment, to community transformation. And I do believe therein lies the secret to primary care surviving. Because if we do that, we won't be drowned out, and we will have that network and that cohesion around us. Our patients will use us in a way that is good for them and good for us, and we will see our communities thrive.